Hello, and welcome to this presentation of KeyStep mk2. I'm Sebastien. I was product manager on this new instrument, and today let's have a quick overview at what this does, why we made it, how we made it, and give a bit of a demo. So, I mean, KeyStep was a strong success for us, but it's also a product that you see everywhere. It's any trade show you're going to see KeySteps at most booths. When people have a device without a keyboard and they want a keyboard, this is the obvious choice. And it's the same for customers, actually. You know, customers who just want to add keys to something, KeyStep has always been the number one choice for that. So there are some qualities of KeyStep that we wanted to keep. First, maybe the least obvious one is the form factor. Like I told you, KeyStep is something that you use mostly to control something else. And so having something that is not too deep means that it's fairly easy to have it in front of something else. And that's something that, you know, it's easy to overlook, but if you have too many controls at the top of your controller, then you're, you know, further away from the thing you want to control. So we kept that. You know, the form factor is almost identical to the original KeyStep. We also wanted to keep the keybed, that slim key keybed with aftertouch. We have the same. We have a better aftertouch on this one. We wanted to keep the connectivity. Like I said, KeyStep was useful to control something else, so we wanted to have MIDI, of course, CVN gate, USB. As you can see, we also have USB-C and a power switch, which is a great novelty. The micro USB and no power switch of the original KeyStep was you know, a big source of criticism, so we solved that. The CV and gate are slightly enhanced. We used to have pitch, velocity, and gate, and now we have pitch, gate, and mod 1 and mod 2. Both of them can be velocity, aftertouch, mod wheel, random per key, pulse per key, and maybe some other modes to come later in the future. And we wanted to keep the price. KeyStep has always been very strong because of the entry-level price. Wanted to keep that. The price of KeyStep grew a bit over time, and now we're in between the launch price of 119 at the beginning of KeyStep and the current price of 149. We're going to be at 129 euros. Okay, so now let's have a look at why KeyStep mk2 is better than KeyStep mk1 and why I think that owners of the mk1 will buy a mk2. The first highlight is this mutate function that we have here that is used for generative sequencing. It's used on the sequencer and the arpeggiator. KeyStep already had these, but now you can transform your sequence or transform your arpeggio and get new ideas immediately at the push of that button. We'll look at that in the demo right after. The second thing is having a display. And having a display means that you don't need to use the MIDI control center to change some settings. Everything can be edited directly from the device. It's also a lot more convenient, seeing your tempo, seeing which sequence is currently loaded. A visual metronome, that's super cool, that when you're real-time recording, you can see the pulsation as you play. So it's not an audio metronome like KeyStep Pro, but already it's very convenient. Better connectivity, I mentioned it already, USB-C, power switch, more CVN gate, that's a strong highlight. A much better sequencer. And I want to highlight, it's not more complex, it's just more convenient. Like having more sequence slots, being able to do unquantized recording, the ability to record pitch bend and modulation. Undo. Undo is such a cool feature that, you know, you can mess a recording and just undo and start again, especially with overdub, which is also a new feature. You write something, you add something on top of it, you mess it up, undo, and you're back to recording something. So, you know, it's more about convenience and flexibility than just more features, more buttons. Same thing with the arpeggiator. The arpeggiators remain, you know, you have the basic arpeggiator shapes, but then we also have all these new ARP patterns, these generative functions that just, you know, completely expands what the arpeggiator can do. And the design. I mean, if we look at, you know, same thing, Minilab 2, Minilab 3, KeyStep mk2, you know, like refreshing these designs, we see how impactful it is. for customers. So that's kind of like the overview of how different these are. And what I would say is let's have a listen. I'm going to run you through the different features that we have here, and I'm going to try and showcase how the different features that we have on KeyStep, they kind of all work together. You know, there's a synergy between the chords, the scales, the arpeggiator, the sequencer, the mutate. All of these things kind of talk to each other. So let's start with the basis. It's a keyboard, and you know, like we saw, most of the people just use it that way, use it as a regular keyboard. I can write some notes, or I can add a chord. Scale, shift plus chord, and I can choose a scale. So, for instance, let's do, I don't know, I was doing F minor, so let's go with that. And now, everything is going to stay in the key. Chords can be edited in detail, and you get the same kind of features that you found on KeyStep 37 with the strum, and also later on KeyLab 3. So if I hold the chord button, I can choose some chord presets. I can choose the spread. I can choose the strum. Let's do I can choose some strumming, I can choose the type of strum, and voicing, which will adapt the chord so it plays the way a keyboardist would play, you know, using inversions rather than just completely remapping the chord. Anyway, quite deep. I would say on this unit you will find some long press to access menus. So sequencer has long press to access the sequencer menu, arpeggiator, same thing, and the chord we just saw that menu. All right. So now I have my chord playing. Let's have a look at the arp actually. So I toggle the arp button. Let's exit the chord and play something. Okay. So I can hold and have my chord playing. So we have the usual pattern. Let's play something soft. So up, down, random, order, which is just the order where I played it, chords, it's useful sometimes. And then we get into the arpeggio patterns. If you have a look at the keys from 7 to 15, we show the user some shapes of pattern that he can obtain with the arpeggiator. Basically what they represent is the density of notes. Do we have notes on all steps, or are there some silences? The length of notes. When there are silences, is it filled with note tails or is it cut? And some polyphony. So right now we're looking at something which is just a note on every step of like a small note on everything. And that pattern that I hear, we can get a new one if I press mutate. I'm gonna get a new idea. And that repeats over and over. It remains. I can change the notes, and I get that same phrase. That phrase remains. If I want to change that phrase, mutate. And then it's random, and you get something. Might be good, might not be good. Switch octaves, and then you pick, the arpeggiator is going to pick notes from 2, 3, or 4 octaves from what I played. All right, let's move to the next arp patterns. Now we start to introduce some silences. More silences. And again, mutate. I'm printed with something else. Right. Now we move to an alternance of long notes and short notes, or mostly long notes. Or we move to polyphony with short notes, more like plucky polyphonic, or things that is more like long chords, up to very long chords, and mostly chords. All right. Let's say we're satisfied with that. We have a pattern that we like. One thing we can do is extend the length of that pattern. So I can either do shift plus here, it's labeled length, and use the encoder, or I can hold that button and press keys to add more or less notes, steps. So if I hold length and press this 4 times, now we're gonna have a 64-step arpeggio. The way that arpeggio is built is that first idea that we had, it becomes an idea, and then it builds a A, B, A, C kind of idea. So it's all random, but there is some logic between one phrase to the other. Let's do a mutation. Maybe let's listen with a rhythm now. So you can hear that there's some logic. Dun, dun. We kind of hear that first idea back in the next phrases. All right. So now we have this R pattern. So like I said, I can change the note that it's going to play. And I'm going to keep that phrasing, but played with different notes. All right, let's say I'm happy with that. So now, another thing that I love to do is, I have this thing that I built. Again, it's just me pressing 4, 5, 6 notes, and then all these ideas are coming from the machine, generated directly. Let's say that I like the phrase that I just got. I can transform it into a sequence. If I look at the Arpeggiator button, the shift function says 2 sec, so it's like 2 sequencer. I can do it while it plays. And now we've turned to a sequencer. So now I'm out of the Arpeggiator. I can't remap the note if I play with the keys. It's going to transpose the sequence, but it's not polyphonic. It's just with one key. So now we have a sequence. What can we do with the sequence? Well, first we can edit it. So if I hold the record button, now we get into step editing, and the display reveals the steps and the content that is in each of the steps. I can go select a note and modify that note only, or remove a note. I don't feel like that's the main philosophy of KeyStep. You record something, and then if you don't like it, you record something else. It's more about like fun and jamming, but it's so convenient that you can just go and say, okay, I don't like step 16. I'm going to add a note, or I'm going to remove that note or transpose it. Very, very convenient. Another thing I can do is do real-time recording on top of it. So I have my sequence playing. There's 2 ways to record. You can do overwrite or overdub. Overwrite, it replaces what I had. Overdub is going to add on top. So let's add a bass. I'm going to overdub. So the record button is blue when I'm in overdub mode. And if I press the play button, there's going to be a count-in, and we can see the metronome, and then I can start to record. 2, 3, 4. Let's listen with a beat. So, just like that, I added a sequence. Another thing that I love to do is doing automations of pitch bend and mod wheel. And that's something that's new. So let's try that. On record. And then we get this like FME sound. So again, let's remember where we came from. We started with just a basic playing a bunch of notes from the chord mode or pressing some notes. The Arpeggiator provides some ideas. That idea I extend, I get a longer phrase, I turn that into a sequence. I add some stuff to my sequence, like overdubbing a bass line or a lead on top of it. Then I can also do some automations of the pitch bend and mod wheel, like all of these things. As it plays, just like all kind of working together. I am quantized to a scale, so anything I play is going to stay musical within that scale. And I have something cool. We can also do mutations on the sequence. Honestly, when you have something this complex with a bass line and some chords, it's not working super great, but mutation on the sequence on basic sequences is very cool. So what I would do is, let's start something fresh. I'm going to hold the sequence button, and then the first thing it suggests is pattern init. So now we're back to something basic. We're going to do some step-by-step recording. So as I press the record button, we saw that recording screen. And now let's start to record something. So same workflow as, well, since microbrute actually. Play some note, hold to add some silences, note plus hold to add some ties. So, and the screen tells me that. All right. All right. So now I just build this sequence. First, shift plus bend is gate length. Very fun to jam with. And shift plus mod is spice, which is going to change the gate length, adding some ratchets, adding some silences, changing the velocity, sometimes the octaves. All right. Now, from this, I can do mutations. And mutation on the sequencer stays in the context that I wrote, but transforms it. On the arpeggiator, it's really a new idea every time. I can choose the kind of idea, like do I want long notes, do I want polyphony? On the sequencer, it's more like, here's something that I wrote, give me a new idea that is derives from that. So let's do that. All right, I get a new bass line that is inspired by the first one that I did, but with a different rhythm. This sounds super cool, you know. So this is mutate on the sequencer, and like I said, it's mostly powerful on simple ideas, and it gives you a new idea, a new variation of that. We can save that sequence to bank 1 preset 1, for instance. All right. We can also save that sequence to bank 1 preset 2. On bank 1 preset 2, maybe we can do another mutation. So now I have this new idea on bank 2. I can save it. Save. All right. So now I can navigate between the patterns. I have 64 patterns in total, 4 banks of 16. So I have my first one. All right. And then I choose pattern 2. And on KeyStep 2, people can create chains. So if I hold shift plus play, then I can write some chains. And then it says select patterns. And I'm going to do 1, 2, 1, 1. And there we go. It's that immediate, and I can have like longer ideas built. Again, that was a bass line that I step recorded with 3 notes, did some mutations. I like something, I save it. I move to the next one, do some mutations, I like it, I save it. And now I do a A/B between these two. 0 effort. Let's do one last thing. So I'm going to exit the chain mode for now. So we're going to stay with this sequence. And I'm going to show you one last thing, which is using the sequence into the arpeggiator. I showed you from an arpeggio, I can use the 2 sequencer, and then arpeggio turns into a sequence. And now we're going to look at the opposite, how a sequence turns into an arpeggiator. The way it works is basically all these phrases, these random phrases we're looking at in the arpeggiator, rather than being something random, it's going to be the sequence that I have loaded that becomes my reference for the arpeggiator. So let's move to the ARP and select number 16, which has a small user icon to reflect that. And now I'm going to play some notes. So if I try to play the same notes that I play, I can remember something like this. I have basically the same idea, but now I can basically just try different notes and get different ideas just with just by remapping the note. And I keep that frame from the sequence, but now I can remap it. And if I end up with something that I like, let's say that actually I like this arpeggio more as a upper phrase, I can do that with these notes. And if I like this, back to sequencer, and now I have a new sequence. So you see what I meant at the beginning, like these features, they work in synergy. It's not like you have a sequencer or you have an arpeggiator. You have a sequencer that you can use to feed an arpeggiator, or you can have the arpeggiator that you can use to feed the sequencer, the chord mode, because the way to just play a bunch of notes that you like and then press one note and get an arpeggio with all these notes together, which is great for mutate because you don't have to always repress all the notes. Mutate as a way to just, okay, give me something new. All of these things kind of talk together. There's a few extra functions here. If we look at them briefly, from the sequence, we can change the time div. 1/8, 1/4, or 16, 1/32, switch to triplets. Sequence nudge. So sequence nudge is going to move my sequence by increments of 1 step. So if I move 3 steps, for instance, it basically just moves everything. Octaves. I can go back to something that was more bassy with the octave. I can double whatever I have recorded. If it's less than, let's say, if it's 16 steps, it's going to go to 32, and it duplicate the content so that I can write a variation, either overwrite or overdub. Quantize, like I say, we can do unquantized recording, and so this button will just immediately quantize what I had. Reload, it goes back to the saved version. I might have done some edits, some recordings that I don't like, just hold reload, and then I'm back to that sequence that I had saved earlier on. Clear, it keeps the time division, the length of the sequence and everything, just flushes the notes. You know, like, okay, I messed up a recording, let's try something new. And undo, finally, let's see if we reload that sequence. Let's see that I did this recording and it's bad. I can just undo. And basically undo is going to go back to what was before the last recording. So press record, do some stuff, exit record, you can undo. If you do another recording, you lose the ability to undo. There's only one depth. But even one depth of undo is already super convenient because you mess up a recording, undo. If you're doing step recording, let's say, so I have my sequence, and I added these notes. Now I can just do shift and undo, and it says undo step 3, undo step 2, undo step 1. So for step recording, undo is one step after the other, going back in the past. Real-time recording, we're not going to undo every note, so it's more like that take that you did, we clear it. Two last things, you can add some program changes. You can send program changes from a sequence. So now that we have 64 sequence slots, it's super convenient to use that on stage, to control the device, and sending program changes is very useful. So that's something on the sequencer. On the arpeggiator, a feature that I like, if you hold ARP, you can choose an ARP length. Have something like, you can choose an ARP length so that if I have an ARP mode, it doesn't just drift, you know, playing top, it reset. I set a reset to 16 steps, and now anytime it goes back, and I mean it resets. It resets every 16 steps, which means that the arpeggiator stays more, you know, rhythmically more consistent with what you're playing, because it resets on the, like you can have it reset on the beginning of every bar, for instance. That's a pretty extensive overview of the features that it can do. I hope you realized the amount of things that this new KeyStep can do, and more than the amount of things that it can do, look at how simple it looks, and look at how, like, these features, it's not about each of them being complex, it's more like the way they work together means you have a lot of creative potential, and that's, to me, that's the highlight, that's the takeaway of this new instrument. Thanks for your attention. See you next time. Bye-bye.